Okay, we've got our task in. Next is to work on the duration because, hey, not every task is going to be done in one day. In fact, as you recall in an earlier training video, when I entered in my task, for every new task that I entered, I set the task mode to have it automatically schedule the duration and the start date. So that's why you got the question mark, because it wants me to clarify, do I really want it to be one day? If so, then go ahead and just select it, type in 1, hit enter, there's 1 day. You can also type in 1D, it's also for 1 day, or if you want it in hours, you can type in 2H for hours, hit enter, and there's 2 hours, okay? You can see over here in the Gantt chart, it's really tiny now because that's only a fourth of the day. So there's hours, there's days, you can do weeks, 2WK. Wow, that really pushes it out. And then notice that the project summary task actually gets stretched out to the longest task within the project, okay? So you got weeks, how about months? How about 1MO? We're really far out there, aren't we? And then you can see up in the timeline that it's, well, you can scroll over here to, you can scroll back and forth here within the Gantt chart. Notice that when I scroll up here on the timeline, you got the sliding bar. You can click and drag and move it around as well. It's easier to click and drag and to see it move over here than to come down here and click and drag the scroll bar because it actually jumps, as you just saw, okay? Whoop, jump. So let me come back up here now that you know how to enter in the duration by hours, days, weeks, months. In fact, we could try a year. Let's go ahead and type in 1. And it gives you actually what you can enter in. Type in a duration in the correct format. 4 hours or 4H, 12 days, 12D, or 2ED for elapsed days. We'll talk about that later. Okay. Let me go ahead for the starting of the book, type in 0. Now, why would I type in 0? Let me hit enter. Scroll back down here so we can see it in the Gantt chart. Anytime that you have a task that has 0 in it, and it says 0 months, it could be days, years, it doesn't matter, it's 0. It'll have a black diamond. This is called a milestone. It's a task that acts as a reference point, marking a major event and typically used to mark the beginning and ending of your project. So the beginning is going to start at this milestone here, that black diamond, which you can see is August 31st. So down below, let's go ahead and do 9. You can do D. Or you don't even have to type in D, you can just type in a number because by default it's going to automatically go to days. So there's 5 days, 2 enter, 5 enter, 30 enter, 5 enter, 2 enter, 3 enter. And then the closing milestone here to mark a major event, the ending of my project, I'm going to type in 0. It ends the same day, but I'll show you later on how we can go ahead and fix this. But for right now, I wanted to show you how you can enter in your duration and how you can enter it in and how it looks over here in the Gantt chart, and also introduce you to the milestone here. Each task that I entered into the project here, well, the basic tasks, not the summary tasks like the research phase, are going to require some sort of resource to complete the task. Resources, as I mentioned in my first training video, can include workers, materials, and costs. And to explain it in a bit more detail, I'm going to go to my PowerPoint presentation. Not only do you have your typical 3 resources, which is your work, materials, and costs, but we have a 4th resource type, and that's budget. And I'm going to go in detail over each one of these here. First, let's talk about the work resources. There's 2 types of work resources. The most obvious one are the people that will be working on the task. That's your resource, your laborers, your writers, your editors. And then we have our equipment resources, something that we can use over and over again, not only on a task or another task, but on a completely different project, like a forklift, maybe a paintbrush if we rinse it out, or a hammer. Now you could say that the hammer and the forklift could be a material resource, but material resources are basically consumable items. So the definition would be supplies or consumable items used to complete a task. So in other words, once we're done with the task, like writing our book, we will have used up quite a bit of paper. Also some ink, and, well, if we were building a home, we'd use up this lumber here. So consumable items will be your material resources when it's used up when you finish completing a task. The third type of resource are your cost resources. They're basically miscellaneous or indirect expenses that will vary from task to task and don't change by the amount of work performed. And they include airfare, lodging, meals, things that don't really have a direct impact. But you still want to keep track of the expenses because they're part of the project. And then finally we have what's called a budget resource, and basically it's the maximum amount of money set aside or budgeted for each resource type. So we've got a set budget for our work, we've got a set budget for the materials, a set budget for the costs. And like I said, those are the 4 types of resources. So with that in mind, we're back into our project here to enter in our project's resources. And to do that, we need to change views. We need to change it from the current view that you can see over here in the view bar, it says Gantt chart, to the resource sheet view. And to change it, there are a number of ways you can change your views. You can either come up here on the task tab to the view group and click on the drop down arrow. There we go, resource sheet. Or you can come down here and look at more views and see what's available. Go ahead and select one and click apply. I'm going to click cancel. Or to save time, if you're on a different tab and you don't want to come up here and click on the task tab to go to the views group, you can just come over here and right click on the view bar and come down here and go to the resource sheet or click on more views. Okay, let me click cancel. Let me go back to the task tab. Or you can right click on the view bar and expand it by selecting view bar. It pops it open if that helps you to feel a little bit more comfortable with what you're looking at here. You can now see the icons. You can even come down here at the bottom and click on the down arrow and go down as far as it'll take us. There's more views. Okay, let me click cancel. I like mine collapsed, so I'll go ahead and right click and uncheck view bar. And then when I want to go to a view, of course, just right click on it and select a view. The other way that you can go to, or to change views, let me come down here and click off, is down below in the status bar to the far right hand corner here. You've got the four icons. You have the Gantt chart that we're currently in. You can see it's highlighted. Then you have the task usage view, the team planner, and of course the resource sheet view. Now before I go ahead and go to the resource sheet view, I want you to know that if you ever get lost and you're not sure where you're at or what you're looking at as far as the views go, you can simply look over here in the view bar and say, okay, I'm in the Gantt chart view. But there's something else you should know about as we get a little bit more advanced or more detailed into our project training video, is that in these views, anytime you see a table here, there's more than one table. This is known as the entry table, at least for the Gantt chart, to enter in our task, the duration, and as you recall when you scroll over, the start and the, well, there's the finish as well, but that's automatically calculated based upon when you start and the duration of the task. In any case, let me go ahead and scroll back. So that's the entry table. How do you go ahead and find out what table that you're in, and if you want to see what other tables are available for that view, the Gantt chart view? Well, come up here, click on the View tab. I mean, we're talking about views, right? So that makes sense to me. Go to the View tab, go to the Data group, and there you go, Tables. Click on the Tables drop-down arrow, and there you go. It's checked. We're in the entry table. If I come up here and select Cost, boom, the table changes, not the view. You can see over here in the view bar, I'm still in the Gantt chart view, but the table here, when it comes to entering in the data, has changed. It's talking about cost. I mean, you can still change the task here, so if I come down here and click once, click softly again, so I can get the cursor in there, or just, select it, and then come up here in the entry bar and, type in print phases, and then hit enter. You can still make changes to the task there, so let me go ahead and undo that. But notice over to the right here, instead of having the duration and the start date, we've got now about costs, fixed cost accrual, total cost, things like that. So again, if you ever get lost, ask yourself two questions. What view am I in? You can see that over in the view bar. And in that view, when you're looking at a table, if a table is available, what table is it? And to find that out, you can either, again, come up here to the View tab, to the Data group, click on the Tables drop-down arrow, or better yet, let me just go back to the Task tab instead of going through all those clicks. To get to the view, to the Data group, you can just go ahead and right-click on the table header cell. When you right-click, it'll show you there. Well, you don't even have to right-click. If you just hover over it, it shows you in that pop-up, the table is the cost, and the view is the Gantt chart. So what view am I in, and what table am I looking at in that view? Go ahead and, as it says, right-click it to change it. Go back to the entry table for the Gantt chart. We're back to something that we're used to seeing. Okay, let's go ahead and start entering in our resources into project here, so later on I can show you how you can assign those resources, like the work resources, so I can start working on these tasks here, also material resources and costs. So to enter in these resources, we need to change views by coming over here and right-clicking on the view bar and going to the resource sheet view. There you go. This is where we enter in the resources. You got many fields here. The first one is the indicator column. It'll show icons that project feels that you should be aware of, information that when you hover over that icon, it'll give you a little pop-up memo. And then to the right of that, you've got the resource name. You can actually type in the name of the person, like Bob Smith, or do what I'm doing. You can type in the function of the resource, of what they're going to be doing, like writing, so writer 1. That way if I have additional writers, I can label them as writer 2, writer 3, writer 4, and so on. And then when I hit the tab key, you can see that project automatically fills in a bunch of defaults. Let me go ahead and go over each one of these fields. The next field here is that you have the type of resource, which is work, material, or cost, as we covered in an earlier training video here. And you can see there's work, material, and cost. Let me click off. Now this writer is going to be working, so we'll leave it as work. And then as far as budget goes, I'll show you how you can convert a resource later on into budget, even though it doesn't show it here. Let me go ahead and click off. Then you've got the material label. It specifies unit of measurement. Like for example, if you type in shingles, that can be measured in cases. Or if you type in reams, that could be measured in, well, paper. Like a ream of paper contains 500 sheets. So if my resource name is plain paper, and the type would be material, of course, then the material label could be reams. So when I go ahead and I assign that resource to a task, it will be assigned as 1 ream of paper. So that's the label for the material and how it can be measured in, or the unit of measurement. And then you've got initials, which is the abbreviation of the name here. So you can have it as, well, big W there, or you can come up in here and WR1 and then go ahead and hit the tab key. Like I said, you can make changes here. Then you've got the group, which will contain the name of the group the resource is assigned to. Now you don't have to assign your resource to a group, just go ahead and type it in. I'm going to have internal resources, so I'll type internal. And then if a resource is external, like we're going to be having some of the tasks outsourced to people outside of the company, then I'll go ahead and add the label field in the group field for them as external. Let me go ahead and hit the tab key. The maximum units is the percentage or hours of work a resource can do when assigned to a task. So if they're at 100%, my default working hours a day are 8 hours, then that means that writer 1 can work at full hours or 8 hours a day. Then you've got the standard rate, the rate paid for regular and non-overtime work, and then of course you have the overtime work. And then you've got the cost per use, or cost accrued each time a resource is used. Let me go ahead and scroll over so we can see the remainder of the fields. Then you have accrue at, which it tells project when to calculate which costs, either, well, standard rate, regular, or overtime, will be calculated for a resource. It's either going to be prorated, or you can see the other options at the start or the end of the task, and prorated is as the task is completed, and that's the default. Okay, let me go ahead and click off. Then you have the base calendar, shows the calendar in use by the resource, and by default it's going to be the project calendar. Of course, you can go ahead and click in here and change that if you'd like. I'm not. Let me hit the escape key. And then you have the code field, which contains extra information about a resource, and of course you can add more columns here or additional fields. We'll learn how to do that in a later training video, as well as removing some of the fields if we don't want to have those fields displayed in the view here. Now if I go ahead and hit the home key on the keyboard, it automatically takes me back to the first cell in the entry table here. So I can go ahead and come down here and add the next resource. And we'll have editor 1 as work, hit the tab key. The initials are fine, and then we'll do internal. Now, the moment I start typing in the first couple of letters, or the first letter, I, it automatically fills in with a copy of what it sees up above. And trying to be helpful, if you just hit enter or hit the tab key on the keyboard, I'll automatically fill in the rest of the data here. Maybe you're trying to duplicate, which makes it easy and nice. In fact, a lot of the things that you can do within the cells, within these tables, within Project, there are a lot of shortcuts that I have in my Excel 2010 training videos that are very helpful if you want to, cut back on some of the work here, not have to duplicate some of it when you've got the shortcuts that are available. In any case, I recommend that you watch my Excel 2010 training videos when it comes to working with cells. And as I go along in these entry tables, or any of these tables, I'll show you as many shortcuts as I can that are pertinent to what we're working on here. But hey, you can learn more, so watch my Excel 2010 training videos. We'll go ahead and leave the rest of the defaults here. I'm going to try to keep it simple in this training video, and then in later training videos, we'll learn how to add the standard rate, overtime rate, cost per use. Let me go ahead and go back to the next row here. In fact, I'll show you a shortcut. I'll type in the next resource, and I won't enter in the group's name internal, although the project manager one is going to be internally, but after I type in the next one, what I can do is if I got a lot of resources that will have the same information, Like for example, these two will both be internal. I can just come up here, and here's a shortcut that you can learn in my Excel 2010 training videos, but hey, why go there when I'm showing it to you here? Well, there's a lot more in my Excel 2010 training videos, again, that I may not be able to show you here for the sake of keeping focused. In any case, you can hover over the lower right-hand corner till you get the black cross. That's known as the autofill handle. When you click and drag that down, it'll automatically fill in the rest of the cells with that initial cell that you have selected. It'll copy it down, so hey, that could save some time. If you got dozens of resources that will have the same information, just fill in one, then click and drag that autofill handle down and you're good to go. It automatically copied that one cell into the other cells. Let me go ahead and continue on here. Okay, subject matter expert will be external. Okay, for the travel expenses, it's not going to be work. If I type in the letter C on the keyboard when I'm in that field, it'll automatically convert to, well, the only field that begins with the letter C, cost. And I can hit the tab key to select that and hit the home key on the keyboard so it takes me back to the first cell. Then I can just hit the tab key and type in the next resource. And then type in the letter M for material, hit the tab key. And then for the material label, glossy paper comes in, like, let's say, reams of 500. So that's the unit of measurement I'm going to be using when I assign this resource to any one of the tasks. I'll actually be assigning a whole ream of paper. So I can type it in uppercase, R-E-A-M, or lowercase, it doesn't matter. Let's just call it a ream here. And I'll enter in more resources later, but you get the idea here. The next thing I'm going to be entering in are the budget resources. And then for the budget miscellaneous cost, the type's going to be cost, hit the tab key. Let me come up here and let's do for the glossy paper. We don't have any, we'll have to have that outsourced and have somebody else bring it in. So it'll be an external resource. Let's go ahead and do the budget for labor, which is going to be the work type. Hit the home key and then do budget for material. Then type in the letter M, and then I only have one material, so I can just go ahead and identify it with ream. So that's the budget for the ream of paper. Now if I had additional materials, like let's say pens and pencils, and the material labels for those were boxes and maybe paper clips, and the material labels for those were boxes as well, then you can go ahead and create additional budget materials, one for each different material label, or just go ahead and leave this blank and say it's for all materials. I mean, it's up to you. I'm going to go ahead and do ream here and then internal and hit enter. And to keep it simple, that's pretty much it when it comes to entering in your resources here, except that when it comes to entering in your budget resources, Project will not differentiate between budget and other resources without setting each budget resource its properties to budget. So to bring up the information or properties for your resources, go ahead and select it and then double click on it. And there you go, resource information. Come over here, there's the box for budget. Go ahead and check it, click okie dokie, and it will convert that to your budget cost resource. So now it's not a resource that is going to be costing you money. It's now, because we have it checked, it's the amount of money that we want to set aside for the cost resources. Then we can come down here, double click on work. There's our budget. Click OK, that we set aside for our work resources. And then materials, go ahead and check it and click OK. Okay, let me go ahead and bring you up to speed here first before I go over how to outline your tasks here. In that, I've added more tasks to my project. So the total amount of tasks that I have here, let me scroll down, is 23. Let me go ahead and scroll back up. I mean, I didn't want to show you a video about how boring it is while I'm typing in the task here. I can just do that and say, okay, you know how to enter in tasks. Let me go ahead and finish entering the rest of the task. And now I have a complete project, or at least all the tasks that are required to complete the project. So with that in mind, now I want to show you how you can add an outline to the task. Now, in order to create an outline, you got to do what I did, or I told you in an earlier training video, have summary task and basic task. For example, I've got a summary task that's called the research phase. In and of itself, it's not an actual task. It actually summarizes or has the group of tasks that need to be completed below it. Like when it comes to researching, I have to examine the software, search internal documentation, and interview the subject matter experts. These three tasks are grouped under the research phase summary task, okay? And in this training video, what I want to do is I want to show you how we can delineate between the two. make it more obvious by creating an outline. So to create the outline, so I can see that that's definitely a research phase, and these are the subtasks to that summary task or that phase, go ahead and select all the tasks that are below the summary task that you want to be grouped underneath that summary task, and then just come up here to the Task tab, go to the Schedule group, and click on Indent Task. When you click on it, it pushes those tasks over and bolds the summary task. You got a little minus sign when you click on it. It collapses it so I can just look at the summary task and not have to look at the subtask if I just want to get an overview of the different summary tasks that are available within the project. And then I can expand it and take a look at its subtask. So keeping that in mind, let's go ahead and do the rest here. In fact, before I do the rest, if you're like, whoops, didn't mean to do this one right here, go ahead and select it, come back up here and click Outdent. And it's no longer part of that group or a basic task to that summary task. But I'm going to go ahead and right-click on it and bring up the mini formatting toolbar, and you can do it here as well, and indent it, and there you go. Or you can hold down the Alt key, Shift key, and hit the left key to promote it, or outdent it, or Alt Shift right key to indent it, or, well, you could say demote, but it's indent. Okay, let me go ahead and do the rest. So for the outline phase, go ahead and click and drag and select all the subtasks for that summary task, and we can do Alt Shift right arrow, and oh, that's fun. And you can see it summarizes the task down below. And if you look over in the Gantt chart, it's got the bar here that says of the longest task within that group, create outline, the total amount of days is going to be 2 days to complete all those tasks. Well, that's assuming that they all start the same day. Let's go ahead and go to the development phase, click the right arrow, edit phase. I'm just going to quickly do the rest of these because I think you get the idea here. And there we go. So we've got all our summary tasks that we can easily spot. Makes it more organized, at least for me. And then, like I said, you can collapse these by clicking on the minus sign, clicking on the plus sign to expand them. Or you can come up here and go to the View tab, come down here to the Data group and click on the Outline drop-down arrow and say you only want to see Outline Level 1, which is all the summary tasks. Let me go ahead and scroll up. You can see the corresponding bars over here in the Gantt chart. Come back up here, click on the Outline drop-down arrow. You can say if there's an Outline Level 2, which is all the subtasks to the summary task. In other words, you can go ahead and add as many outlines or levels as you want. You can have a subtask to a subtask. Let's select this one and go ahead and right-click on it and indent it again. All of a sudden that becomes a subtask to this task right here, the one up above it. Let me get out of the way here. Let me click off to the one up above it, which is a summary task, sub-summary task to that summary task. I mean, you could really go nuts. Let me go ahead and hit undo and not do that, but keep everything at one level here. Come back up here, click on Outline, hide subtasks, hide subtask again. Goes down to the next one. You can hide subtask for that one, or you can go ahead and select, well, those two and click on Outline and show subtask for what you have selected there. I mean, you get the idea. Let's just go ahead and all subtasks so we can see them all. The WBS, or Work Breakdown Structure, is a more detailed outline number format. In other words, when you're looking at this, you can see that we've got number 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a very simplistic number format, which is fine when we're in the Gantt chart and I'm looking at my summary task. I can look at it and go, oh, it's the research phase. Or if I don't have phase and it just says research, that's still fine because I can see it's in bold and it's outdented and the subtasks are indented down below. Now when I print reports or I'm in another view that doesn't provide that clear outline here, bold with the subtask not bold, then I may want to go ahead and add the WBS or a detailed number outline. To add that, come up here and click on the Format tab, go to the Show Hide group and check Outline Number, and there you go. So when I print reports and I'm looking at this and it just says Research and it's got number 2, then I know when I look at it as 2.1 that that's a subtask to the summary task 2, 2.2. So I'm not guessing and going, let's see, examine software. Is that part of research or interview subject matter experts? The outline number format really details it. So if I'm looking down here and I'm like, oh, 4.2 has got to be a subtask to 4. 5.1 has got to be a subtask to 5. So whatever the non-decimal number is, all decimal numbers would be subtasked to that non-decimal number. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck it. As you recall in an earlier training video, I briefly introduced you to the timeline. Here I want to go over it a bit more in depth. Now, the purpose of the timeline is to give you a high-level view of your project. For starters here, when I look at the project in the timeline, I can see when it begins and when it ends. Pretty simple, right? I mean, I don't have to come down here in the Gantt chart and scroll over to the right, which, by the way, when I do, you can see that this window here that it's focused on also moves over to the right as well. Look at this and go, let's see, it ends about September the 27th. It shows me right there. Now, instead of scrolling down the Gantt chart, I can come up here, hover over that blue bar until I can see, well, it changes to a dark blue, and I get a four-way arrow. That means that I can go ahead and pan, or click and drag and pan the view in the Gantt chart to the left or to the right. You can see down below in the Gantt chart, as I move back, it moves it back to the beginning or start of all the tasks on the project date of October the 31st. Let me go ahead and scroll back up to the top here. Now, if you turned off the timeline by accident, or you want to turn it off or turn it back on, either way, come up here, click on the View tab, and go to the Split View group, and there it is. Uncheck it, check it again. You can also right-click on the timeline and uncheck it to get rid of it, and of course come back up here on the View tab and check in the Split View group timeline. Other things you can do with this bar here as far as panning back and forth is you can actually zoom in on the project. Right now, if you look at it, if I go to Wednesday, September the 1st, it's from the 1st through the 5th in this short period here. If I want to zoom in, then I can come up here and hover over the left-hand side of that panning window until I can see arrows pointing in opposite directions, and click and drag to push that in, and you can see it starts zooming in down below in the Gantt chart. Now I have to scroll twice as far to get anywhere, but it's a little bit more detailed when it comes to the date here. Finishes on the 27th. There's the 26th, 27th, 28th, and the 29th. And as you hover over a number, it includes both the 27th, 28th, unless of course I go ahead and click and drag and zoom in more, and there we go. There's the 27th, there's the 28th, there's the 29th, and then I can click and drag that back and forth and have a lot of fun, okay? Go ahead and zoom back out. Now, in addition to the timeline that you're looking at, which is for the overall project, you can actually add tasks to the timeline by coming down here and right-clicking on a task, and then going down to Add to Timeline. Adds it right there, so I can, again, the purpose of it is a high-level view of my project. I mean, I'm picking out elements that I want to focus on this timeline. Otherwise, I wouldn't pull anything up and I'd just leave it all down below, and, well, just if I have a lot of tasks, I'd have to scroll up and down to see them all. But this way, I can just quickly glance up here, get a high-level view, and say, okay, well, right now, this is what I'm focusing on, Examine Software. It goes from that date to that date. Cool. Let's go ahead and add another one. Let me right-click on this one and also add it to the timeline and see how it's stacked. I can actually change the order of its stacking, so I can click and drag this one, put it up here, and it switches it. So now Examine Software is down below, click and drag, Examine Software is up above. You get the idea. And then to get rid of it, you can of course go ahead and right-click on it and say Remove from Timeline. And then you'll notice that when I right-click on it, by default, Detailed Timeline selected. If I go ahead and deselect that, I don't get the thicker view. I just get a thin view of a timeline here with the task that's been added to it. I have to hover over it to be able to see it, but that way I can add more tasks to it. And if I just want to graphically look at it, not necessarily have to see the task name there. But in any case, if I want more details, right-click on it and say Detailed Timeline. You can also display the task as a callout instead of an actual bar here by right-clicking on it and say you want to display it as a callout so it pops up above, so you can still get the high-level view of your project here without the task being overlaid on top of it in a bar format. And in order to do this, it has to be in Detailed View, because if I right-click on it and I deselect Detailed View, it's gone. So let me right-click on it again, go back to Detailed Timeline. It's there because I haven't removed it, unless of course I right-click on it and remove it from the timeline. Let me go ahead and right-click on this one again, and let's add it to the timeline. And if I come down here and let me scroll back, and I come up here on the timeline and I right-click on it, I can go to that selected task. When I right-click on it, go down to it, it takes me right to the selected task over in the Gantt chart. I can go this way, and not only can I right-click on it in the timeline to go to the selected task, but you can also right-click it, well, the task in the table here, and scroll to the task, and it will take you right to that task there, which coincidentally all the other tasks are on the same date or begin on October the 31st. So that's why we see them all at once here. Okay, the last thing I want to go over is how you can copy the timeline. Come up here outside, don't right click on the task, but right click in a blank area of the timeline so you can get the shortcut menu copy timeline. You can do it for email, presentation, or full size. If you do it for email, it's a smaller version, presentation is a larger version, and then full size is the original size. First, let's do it for email. Select that. Let me go ahead and come down here and right click on my Word document to open up a new Word document so I can show you what it looks like when we paste it here. Let me hit enter a couple of times, come back up here, go to the Home tab to the clipboard group and click paste. So that's for email, about yay big. Okay, hit enter a couple of times, come back to project, right click in a blank area, copy timeline for presentation, go back to my document, let's go ahead and click paste, hit enter a couple of times and then go back to project, right click in a blank area, copy timeline full size, go back to the document, paste, and there you go. So that's the size of it for your emails, for presentations, and the full original size. Sweet. Linking tasks means that you want to take one task and create a relationship with another. For example, in my outline phase, I've got the first task to create an outline. Now, I want to go ahead and link it to the next task because this task must be completed before I start the next one. And if I link them together, I can create that relationship, which is a finish to start relationship that says this task must be completed or must finish before I start the next one in that relationship, and see if it makes sense. I have to have an outline. If I don't have an outline, then I can't go to the next task because I have nothing to hand over to the subject matter expert for them to review. And then without their review, I can't go to the next task to take their suggestions and to make modifications to that outline with. Okay? So I can go ahead and create these relationships, and the default relationship is finish to start. That's the basic. Now that we understand the basics, let me go ahead and go over it a little bit more in depth when it comes to linking tasks by going to my PowerPoint presentation. Now when it comes to linking task, when you link task to another task, it's going to create a relationship. In other words, now that we're hooked up and we're related, what type of relationship are we going to have? Are we going to be good to each other, bad? No. There are four types of relationships once you connect your tasks or link them together. You have a finish to start relationship, which is the default relationship in project, then start to finish, start to start. Basically, none of this means anything right now until you come down and read this little sentence right here. This will help you determine the task relationships. So when you connect your task, you're going to ask yourself, the predecessor or the task before this one that I'm looking at must what? Before this task can what? So for example, the predecessor, the task before this, must finish before this task can start, which is probably the easiest concept of a relationship between linking tasks, as I just described a minute ago. For example, before I can go ahead and eat my dessert, the predecessor dinner must be finished or completed. Well, that's not my best example. Let me show you a few of them here. Let me go to the next screen. Okay, the first two of the four. Finish to start. The training, the predecessor, and you can keep an eye up here on this that you're going to state when you're looking at or defining a relationship between tasks. The predecessor, the training, must finish before the development can start. So this would make sense. We've got to be trained first before we can go ahead and produce something. Next is the start to finish relationship. The predecessor, electrical, must start before the sheetrock can be finished. Now let's think about that. When you're drilling holes through the 2x4s to string your wires throughout the house for electricity, you want to make sure that you start that before the sheetrock, the panels go up, because otherwise you're going to have to punch holes through the sheetrock to be able to continue to string your wiring throughout the house. Okay, let's go to the last two. Our start to start. The writing must start before the editing can start. Before we can edit something, something must be written. So obviously, in this case, you'd want to start writing, even if it's just a paragraph. Doesn't sound very efficient, but at least you got something to edit, even if it's just a word or, like I said, a paragraph. Now, finish to finish, the carpeting must start before moving in can finish. Like I said, the example is not the greatest, but think about it. If you're laying down carpet and somebody hurries and moves in everything before you actually finish carpeting, then you're going to have some of the furniture on the carpet, some of it off. So you have to finish carpeting the whole house before you can actually finish moving in. Break it down that a little bit further. You can carpet the bedrooms, but you haven't finished carpeting the house, right? or maybe you carpeted half of a room. You could still move furniture in, although I don't recommend that. It's not good for the carpet to have them stretch and pull it with heavy objects on them, but I hope you get my point. Okay, now let's go ahead and link our task or create relationships between the tasks that we want to have that, well, one has to finish before you start the next one. You can go ahead and click and drag to select the two tasks that you want that relationship with, and then come up here on the Task tab to the Schedule group, and there's the link button right there. You can see when I hover over it, you can use the shortcut keys as well, Control F2. I'm just going to go ahead and click on it, and there you go. Okay, notice this, that over in the table here, instead of the outline phase being 2 days, which was the longest task in the group there, the Create Outline, is now 3 days, because you can see over here in the Gantt chart that when this task has finished in the relationship, the next task will start. So after 2 days, it goes to day 3. Of course, this one's starting at the same time as Create Outlines, so it can all be finished within 3 days. I mean, that is if I can modify at the same time I'm creating it, which I can't. So we need to go ahead and link this one to that one. Let me click off and then click and drag to select both those tasks. And you can come up here to the Schedule group and click on Link, or you can go ahead and right-click your selection, bring up the mini formatting toolbar, and there you go. You can link it there as well. In which case now you can see it takes 4 days. You can see over here in the Gantt chart, when that one's complete, go to the next one. When that one's complete, go to the next one. So after 2 days, we go to the 3rd day. After the 3rd day, go to the 4th day to modify the outline. Sweet. Now to go ahead and break the links, if you made a mistake, you can go ahead and select them, and then give it a right click and come down here in the mini formatting toolbar, and you can see the shortcut keys there, Control Shift F2, or just hit the unlink button and we're back to where we started. Another way that you can go ahead and link these up, if you go to the successor of the task that you want to link to, the predecessor, like I want to link this one to that one, then go ahead and double click on Review as Subject Matter Experts, and you get the Predecessors tab. I mean, you got a bunch of other tabs, but go to the Predecessors tab, click and drag the title bar out of the way. You can see that its predecessor, the task before it that I want to link to, is number 7, Create Outline. So if I have a bunch of tasks that are called Create Outline, just remember the number 7. Let me click and drag, because when you come in here and you click in the task name field and you click on its drop down arrow and you select Create Outline, verify that the ID is number 7. Like I said, if you have a bunch of duplicates, Create Outline, you'll know that this is the correct one because it comes right before number 8. And again, the default type of relationship is finished to start. Of course, you can come in here, click on the drop-down arrow and change it, which we'll do in a later training video, but we want to keep it simple. And click OK, and there we go. This one has to be completed before you start the next one. You can see that in the Gantt chart. Sweet. In fact, you can come over here in the table and scroll over, and you can see that this one, Task 7, starts on the 31st, ends on September the 1st. Then the day after that, the very next day, Task 8, to review with subject matter experts, continues on the 2nd. The predecessor is task number 7 here in the relationship, the link. Okay, let's go ahead and scroll over. So you don't have to, look over here in the chart if you're a table dude and you want to look at the numbers in the table, that's fine. And then finally, let me go ahead and I can undo that, or just like I said, select the 2 and then give it a right click and unlink it. The other way that you can link these up is that you can hover over here in the Gantt chart over one of the task bars until you get a 4-way arrow, then click and drag it, and then when you drag it, hover over the next taskbar that you want to link to, and you can see that little pop-up there, it's got a finish to start link. The finish of Task 7 to the start of Task 8, let go, and boom, there you go. The problems that you may run into when you start creating links is that, for example, if I come up here and I select this task, and I select that task down below, because you can do multiple selections by holding down the Control key, and then you go, oops, I missed this one, let me go ahead and Control click that one. I don't recommend that, because watch what happens. When I right click to go ahead and link it, how does the link go? Well, the way I selected it. I selected that one first, then this one second, so that one was first, then that one was selected second, then that one last, the middle one, so don't do that, okay? Let me go ahead and undo that. Or again, you can right click and break the linkage. And let me go ahead and break these two here, right click, because when it comes to linking, more often than not, if I don't start from scratch, I make a lot of mistakes. So if I want to go ahead and link all these tasks together, not the summary tasks, I don't link those together. I link all the, the milestones and the basic task. Go ahead and select the first one, hold down the Control key, click and drag, select the 3 basic tasks to the summary task, then click and drag the next 3, the next 2, the next 2, the next 2, click and drag. Let me scroll down, and then click and drag and select the last. If you made a mistake, don't go back and control click something else because you'll screw it up. Just do it in order there, as I mentioned. And then you can give it a right click or just come up here on the task tab to the schedule group and click link. And whoa, there we go. Stretched it out, didn't it? In fact, you can, scroll over here or come up here in the timeline if you have it open. Hover over the bar up at the top till you get a 4-way arrow, and you can click and drag to go woo woo, pan back and forth. And if you want to be able to see more of the task and not have them stretched out, as you can see in the time scale, you can get more down to it day by day than it looks like maybe every couple of days or so. In any case, you can come up here, hover over the right-hand side or the left-hand side of that panning window and click and drag to zoom in which case now it goes to maybe every 3 or 4 days to be able to fit everything in there. The other thing that you can do that's really helpful, if you want to be able to see all of it together here, instead of just clicking and dragging here, I'll go over this in a later training video, but you can come over here on the time scale on the Gantt chart and give it a right click, go ahead to zoom, and say that you want to see the entire project within the Gantt chart, and then click okie dokie, and hey, there you go. Well, you can't see the entire one from top to bottom, but you can see it from left to right. So if you want to scroll it to the top, because we've got quite a few tasks there, you can see that there. Okay, sweet. So it starts on August the 31st, the milestone, which is the first task, examine the software. When that's completed, go to the next one, and you can see it just keeps moving it out. So our finish date wasn't the longest task in the project. It's now, because everything is related and linked together, as soon as the last task is completed, which is what, look up here in the timeline, November the 5th. Okay, you can again scroll down here, scroll over just a little bit and see it there as well, the milestone when that last task, when you hover over it, says it's the 5th, which is verified by the milestone there, the 5th, which is easier to see than to me come over here and hovering over that last task. So that's why I like milestones. As you recall in the previous training video, when we linked our tasks together, the default relationship type was finish to start. And as you recall, there are 4 types of relationships. Finish to start, again the default, start to finish, start to start, and finish to finish. Now as you can see over here, I've got the default on all my tasks that when this task is completed, you can see that the arrow comes out at the end when it's completed, and it goes to the beginning of the next task, finish to start. In fact, you can hover over that line. You can get a little pop-up to clarify that that is a finish to start relationship. From task ID number 7, create outline, to task ID number 8, review with subject matter experts. Now, before I go ahead and I show you how to change these, like let's say from finish to start to start to start, what would happen if I go ahead and I insert another task here? Would it automatically create that relationship? And if so, what type of relationship would it be? Well, let's go ahead and find out. Let me go ahead and select task 10 and hit the insert key on the keyboard. And let's type in a new task. And I'm going to abbreviate it. Instead of spelled out, we'll have it called review with SME or subject matter experts. Hit enter. And because my task mode is in automatic, it automatically gives me the default 1 day with the start date on the same day as the project start date. So it doesn't automatically link up. You can see it's this little guy out here going, help, I want to be part of everybody. So if I want to go ahead and include him in the relationships, that when this task, its predecessor, has finished, it starts on this one. Then as you recall in the previous training video, to go ahead and create that link, just, well, one way is to go ahead and double click to open up that task. Then I want to go ahead and link it to its predecessor. And what predecessor is it? Task 9, because this is task 10, modify outline. So if I come over here, click in the task name field, click on its corresponding drop down arrow, and it's modify outline. When I select it, make sure it says task 9. Well, just in case you have modify here, modify outline there. It's the task 9 modify outline. You can see the ID there. And the type is finish to start. Go ahead and click OK, and there we go. Now, the question mark 1 day, again, it's in automatic mode. It says that, hey, the default's going to be 1 day. Do you want to go ahead and confirm it? I can type in 1, hit enter, and there we go. Now, to go ahead and change the relationship type between 2 tasks, like let's say for modifying the outline, we want to change the relationship with its predecessor instead of waiting for the predecessor to finish before this one starts. How about if we change it so they can both start at the same time? Let me show you how you can do it and then explain and see if it makes sense by having this one start at the same time as that one. So to change it, double click on it, opens up the task with the predecessors tab, because the predecessor in this relationship to task 9 is right there, task 8, review a subject matter expert. Come in here, click on the drop down arrow and change it from a finish to start to start to start. And as you recall in the previous training video, if you remember that phrase, when it comes to seeing how this is going to work, you can say, okay, the predecessor must start, and the predecessor is task 8, so this task must start before task 9, modify the outline, can start. So if I go ahead and, well, before I click OK, let me click and drag the title bar down. You can see that the duration of the project is going to take 48 days. Now, if I can start this task at the same time as that one, and they're both how many days? 1 day. Instead of going 1 day and then going to the next the second day, they can both be in 1 day, both started and completed, then the duration overall of the project should be cut back to 47 days. So if I come back up here, click and drag it so we can see it, so I can go ahead and click OK, there we go, 47 days, which by the way, do you see how these cells are shaded? In fact, let me click and drag the split bar over. The link between these cells that are being shaded means that what I do here is affecting these other cells. So when I go ahead and change the relationship, it's saying, okay, you're affecting the duration of the project, so it's got that highlighted. Also the finish date. Also the outline phase used to be 5 days, so it highlights that, saying, hey, something happened here. And as you recall, it used to be 5 days. Well, if you can't remember, come up here and hit undo, and it goes back to 5. Come back up here and click redo, goes back to 4. So you can undo, redo, undo, just as long as you don't click save, because when you do that, it gets rid of your undo. Okay. And coincidentally, when we shorten this, it affects all the other tasks that are linked to or from the last task here, which gets bumped up so we can start that earlier, the review of subject matter expert, because both of these can be completed on the same day. And then those successors to this task, they get bumped up. Everybody gets bumped up 1. So the finish date right here, November the 4th, if I hit undo, is November the 5th. And if I go redo, again, these two tasks are starting on the same day, which, by the way, if you look over in the Gantt chart, now look at the line. Instead of the default finish to start where the line comes out at the end, when it finishes that task and goes to the beginning of the next one, it now comes out at the beginning of the task and goes to the beginning of the next one, which means that they can both start at the same time. Well, it says that the predecessor must start before this task can start, so this one has to start even if it's just a minute. So let's see if this makes sense. I'm going to go ahead and modify the outline, but this task must start even if they're just going over the outline for 30 seconds and they're already popping off suggestions. Can I not, after the first 10 seconds or 30 seconds, the expert says, hey, you need to go ahead and put this in bold and go ahead and move the text over here. I can start modifying it, can I? I mean, it's getting a little bit nitty-gritty, like, okay, maybe not the first 10 seconds, maybe the 30 seconds, but in general, I can go ahead and start modifying as soon as the subject matter expert is reviewing it with me. Okay, so I can start those at the same time, basically. I'm not going to split hairs and go, okay, it's been 10 seconds, 20 seconds, we have to wait. If your project calls for that, then by all means, make the adjustments there. Which, again, by the way, you can hover over that if you're not sure what type of relationship that is. You can see it start to start. You can also, if you're good, get that little pointer on top of that line there, that relationship, and double click really fast. And you can change the dependency here or the relationship type, clicking on the drop down arrow, and do it that way. Okay. The lag and lead times allows for more flexibility than we have with our standard 4 types relationships when it comes to linked task, as you recall in an earlier training video. For example, the lag time is a delay time between 2 linked tasks that adds waiting time. So if I have one task that's pouring cement and it takes a day to do it, but it takes 3 additional days for it to dry, don't add another task unless you want to about, waiting for cement to dry. Just go ahead in the original task where it says pouring cement, the default is 1 day, and then add lag time of 3 days that you can say, look, it's something separate. It's not really a task that needs to be completed, but it's required for the cement after we're done pouring it. And then for lead time, it's an overlap between 2 linked tasks. So for example, down here when it comes to adding images, it's a finish to start relationship with its predecessor, so I have to wait the full 19 days before I start adding images. But if I add lead time, I can say, look, after 17 days, let's lead into the predecessor by 2 days, I can go ahead and start adding images. So to add lag or lead time, adding lag time is a positive number, lead time is a negative number. All I have to do is go ahead and let me double click on add images. To add lag time, come up here, and if it's a day, go ahead and type in 1. Hit enter, and it automatically defaults to day. Click OK. Before I click OK, notice that the project finish date is November the 4th. Click OK, pushes it out to the 5th. And you can see, by hovering over that line between the 2 tasks, the relationship, the link line, that it has a lag of 1 day. In fact, if you double click on it, you can go ahead and change it to 2 days. up arrow and click OK. And you can see it's pushed out more. You can also, instead of using days, type in WK for week, like 1 WK, or for month, for 2 months, 2 MO. And as we discussed in an earlier training video, when it comes to entering in our duration here, you can also do it the same when it comes to your lag and lead times. Now, to enter in the lead time, let me go ahead and double click on that line really fast. Let's set this back to 0 and delete that. Click OK. I can go ahead and, double click on this, go to the predecessor tab. Over here in the lag, the lead is a negative number. So instead of lagging, we're now leading by -2. Hit enter and click OK. And then you can see the relationship line is coming around back in by 2 days. So after 17 days, we can go ahead and start the next task on a finish to start relationship between the two tasks. Now you can also do it with percentages. In other words, if you type in a -30% lead time, that would mean the successor would start after the predecessor is finished 70%. So let me come back up here, double click. Let's delete that, clear it out. Whoops, you see the mistake I made? When I hit delete, it deleted the entire task. I don't want to do that. Click cancel, double click. Okay, let's just go ahead and type in 0, hit enter, click OK. We're back to where we started. So if we double click on this and we use the percentage and say negative, and then go ahead and type in a 30% lead, and then hit enter, click OK. You can see after 70% of the right content has been completed, it'll go ahead and start the next task. Go ahead and hit undo, and let me go down to task 15. Let's go ahead and do -50%, click OK. So, the predecessor is 2 days, so after the first day, the very next day, we can go ahead and start the next task. So instead of finishing on November the 4th, it's now November the 3rd by 1 day. And then last, you can come down over here in the table at the bottom and scroll over to the right. You can see that the default relationships are finished to start. It won't show them because, it's default. It's part of project saying I'm not going to show the default relationships. And those that aren't defaulted, it'll show you what the relationship type is with that predecessor, SS, start to start. And then if there's any change in lag or lead time here with the lead time, it'll show us the relationship type FS with the lead time there. Cool. And I'll go ahead and scroll back. A task constraint is a condition or limitation placed on the start or finish date of a task, and because the task constraint limits a project's flexibility by altering its schedule, I recommend only using it when absolutely necessary. So this is how it works. When I'm down here looking at, let's say task 9, and let's see, what is the start date on this? I can either hover over in the Gantt chart on its corresponding bar, the task bar, you can see the start is the 21st, or I can come over here and scroll over to the right in the table, you can see the start date is the 21st. If the start date for this task can start no earlier than, let's say, the 24th, 3 days later, no matter if the task above it completes way early, because maybe let me go ahead and scroll back, modifying the outline, the person who's doing it, the resource isn't available until the 24th, then to go ahead and set this up and put a constraint on this to say start no earlier than that date, go ahead and double click on that task, come over here and click on the Advanced tab, and there's the default constraint type to start as soon as possible. We're going to go ahead and change that to say you can start no earlier than, and instead of NA non-applicable, let's click on the drop-down arrow, 2013. Let's just go ahead and type it in. It'll be a lot faster than scrolling all the way back to 2010. Let's say 9/24/10, and then go ahead and click OK. It pushes it out because, again, this task, as you can see, it's affecting all the other tasks down below, can't start at the same time that its predecessor starts, which is the start-to-start relationship. In fact, you can hover over here and you can see that it has start-to-start in that pop-up. Can't start at the same time because the resource, or for whatever reason, if it's not the resource that you have with your project, you can put that constraint on. So if they finish up earlier, can't start this task until the 24th. And you can see that the flexibility is now limited, and probably good not to put the constraint in and to say, hey, let's get somebody else to work on it so we can get this done sooner. But nonetheless, it's there. The other option is if you just want warnings and you don't want the constraint to be honored, so it just says, hey, we'll go ahead and we'll keep shifting the tasks along and not have it pushed out, but just warn you that this task really can't start until the 24th, then you can come up here and click on the File tab, go down to Options, select Schedule, the category, and then come down here, and there it is. Tasks will always honor their constraint dates. That's the default being checked. If you uncheck it, then when there's a constraint, it won't honor it, but it's just basically to let you know that, hey, there's a constraint here that you should be aware of, but we won't go ahead and constrain it. Click Cancel. And then to go ahead and remove the constraint, well, first of all, let me go ahead and scroll back here. You can see over here in the indicator column, there's the constraint. This task has a start no earlier than constraint on September the 24th, and also you can come up here on the Task tab to the task group and click on Inspect, and the inspector over here reveals information on factors affecting the start date of the selected task. You have to have the task selected here. You can select other tasks to see how they're affected. We can go ahead and go back to Modify Outline. Then you can see the constraints start no earlier than the 24th. Go ahead and close out. So you can look at the indicator in the indicator column, hover over that, or use the Inspect feature. And then to go ahead and clear it out, double click. On the Advanced tab, we want to change that to as soon as possible. And you can go ahead and delete that and click OK. And now we're back to where we started. But let me go ahead and undo that. A task deadline is to indicate a deadline that you wish for without project altering the schedule. Unlike task constraints, as we learned in the previous training video, where you're constrained to a certain day, a deadline is just an indicator to say, hey, this is what I would like to happen without affecting the project. And it can only be applied to one task at a time. So if you're currently working on, let's say, writing the content, and you're like, okay, here it is, but in my mind, I think it should finish by a certain day here. In fact, let me go ahead and scroll over in the entry table. There's the finish date. And let's say that we haven't gotten to it yet, but in my mind it should be finished by the 17th. But I don't want to put a task constraint in here that says finish no later than the 17th, because that will affect the flexibility of my project. But something that is an indicator to me that doesn't affect the project, then let's go ahead and scroll back and double click on the task, go to the Advanced tab, there's the deadline, go ahead and type in your date. Or you can, well, click on the drop down arrow and choose one, but it's quicker for me to type in the date, 10/17/10, hit enter on the keyboard, and there you go. You get the indicator over here on the task bar, or the bar that's related to that task, a little green arrow pointing down. You can see how far past that task is going, and you can hover over it. You can see it's a deadline, write content, the name of the task, and the deadline is Sunday the 17th. You click off down here, and you can see that you also get an indicator in the indicator column, a red diamond with an exclamation point in it. You can hover over that to get the pop-up to see what that's about. Now again, if we go ahead and we start shifting things around, the deadline's not going to prevent the flexibility or the flow of the project here. It's just an indicator, an FYI to you. Having said that, as you start assigning resources, when you have this task deadline applied and the task is going past it, you will get some pop-up warnings that says, hey, you got a scheduling conflict here, but again, it won't affect your scheduling as the deadline is an FYI. So it doesn't matter if you continue or click cancel on the conflict warning. And then to go ahead and get rid of it, double click on the task, come up here, select the deadline date, delete it, click OK, and it's gone. A task node is just that, adding notes to a task that can include hyperlinks, objects, and Microsoft files like Excel or Word. So for example, if I want to go ahead and, well, there we go, add images. Let's add a note over here. You can double click anywhere on the task and then come up here to the Notes tab, and down below go ahead and type in some text or type in your note. And you'll notice that when I start typing in my URL to my website, www.vid, automatically creates a link to it. So I just need to finish typing it and then hit enter. And then to insert objects, come up here and click on Insert Object. Let's see, Create from File, because it's out there in the file somewhere, in which case we can go ahead and click Browse. And it takes me right to the exercises folder on my desktop. Otherwise, I'd select Desktop over here and then come to the exercises folder on my desktop, double click, and let's do Woman Construction Worker, double click, and then we can display that as an icon if I'd like, and then click OK. So there's the icon of the Woman Construction Worker. So I can click OK and I'm done. When I click in a task down below to see the task up above over in the indicator column, it says this is the note. So it has the text there that I can read what's in the note, and also you can see the URL. Of course, you can't click it right there. You actually have to double click on the task to open it up. And you can click on the URL and it says, hey, do you trust this? We're not sure. Of course we can trust videotrainingpro.com. Say yes, and it says, you really sure? Oh yes, okay. and then it opens up, takes me to my website. Close out, and then of course you have the image, double click, and are you sure you want to open it? Say yes. You could say the logo for our company. We like plan before we actually build, or whatever. Let's go ahead and close out. You get the idea. I can go ahead and type in text, insert links, also objects, whatever's pertaining to that task that's important for me to go over during the project or to have available right over here to at least know that it's there, so I can double click on the task and go right to the Notes tab. Okay. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please see the description below this video.